Das Wasser hat ein Gedächtnis.
Water has a memory.
Und das Wasser hat so Intelligenz, viel mehr wie die Luft, nicht?
Water is intelligent, much more so than air.
Das Wasser es ist eine kosmische Sache.
Water is a cosmic thing.
Water fascinates him. He observes it, listens to it, talks to it, and learns from it. Water is Johann Grande's element. He's known far beyond the boundaries of his native Tyrol as the discoverer of revitalized water. He's not an esoteric, he believes in physics, not in the textbook variety, but in his own unique form. He changes water, and the water he changes is able to transfer its positive power to other water. How he revitalizes water is his secret, but otherwise he's willing to discuss almost anything.
The short time that we have here is an apprenticeship, and all of us are really apprentices. No matter how many academic titles you have, you're still just an apprentice.
During his apprenticeship here on Earth, Johann Grande has discovered something that even ultra-modern industry is grateful for, because it saves large amounts of chemicals.
In the first tests we ran before Grande had been installed, the water was almost a health hazard. There were millions of coliform bacteria in just 5 milliliters of water. But in the most recent tests, with the Grande device installed, there were no coliform bacteria at all. Beforehand, we had to change the water every 3 months because it had simply gone bad. There were so many bacteria in it that you couldn't stand the smell. Now there are no bacteria in the water, and it was 7 months before we changed the water the first time. The cost has dropped by half. We use fewer chemicals and save money there too. It's simply wonderful.
Wir haben weniger Chemie, wir sparen auch Chemie ein. Im Grund einfach spitze.
2 decades ago, in his search for a suitable source for his revitalized water, Johann Grande found a spring in an abandoned copper mine. It very quickly became clear that there was something very special about the water, and it provided the basis for his future experiments.
Wir haben zweimal Wasser umgekriegt von den Steinwasser.
We took several samples of water from the mine and put it under a microscope, and I could see that it was full of minerals and was gleaming. And the last time you could see the minerals as hundreds of beautiful little crosses, nothing but crosses, and hundreds of them.
Grande's biography is part of a contemporary history. He spent his youth in poverty, and getting an education was impossible. There was no opportunity, and in particular, no money.
Ich bin ja gerade 7 Jahre zur Schule gegangen, auf Volksschule nicht.
I only had 7 years of schooling, elementary school, you know, because by the time I was 13, I was already driving a tractor and hauling wood for the district authorities.
After the war, a period of reconstruction began. There was work to be done, and young Johann Grande made an acquaintance that was to change his life.
Ja, das war so, ich habe eine Freundin gehabt in Vorarlberg und das war seine Schwester.
The way we met was that I had a friend in Vorarlberg, his sister Kati. I went home with her to Tyrol once, and of course I met Hans there. Something clicked between us, and we started spending time together.
Das hat natürlich gleich gefunkt und wir sind beieinander geblieben. War ja ein fescher Bursch und die haben gern Mengen machen.
He was a really good-looking man, and I really liked him, you know, and I guess he liked me too. My future husband was working for a fruit dealer, and he had to set out at 1 in the morning to get to work on his motorcycle. And he didn't have anything warm to wear, so he tucked newspapers into his clothes to keep out the wind.
I had to put in a lot of overtime, you know, day and night. I have a monthly pay slip, and I've kept it because it has 420 hours on it. I still have it.
Und im Sommer ist so gewesen, bin ich...
In the summer, I went out and picked blueberries. I brought them home, and he took them to Bad Gastein because that's where we could get the most money for them.
Am meisten kriegt dafür.
Ja, aber so haben wir dann Heisel da.
And then we built a house, and I must say, the whole family pitched in to help build it, my wife and the children too.
Frau auch, das ist... und die
An honest family where people help one another, that's a powerful thing.
Familie, was zusammenhilft, das ist was Starkes, gell?
Und haben wir alles selber gemacht.
We did all the work ourselves. I'd say there isn't a stone in the whole house that I haven't held in my own hand.
A welcome visitor to the Granders' home is the well-known singer and former skier Hansi Hinterseer, who lives in neighboring Kitzbühel.
Ja, und bis Tag und Nacht, ein Satellit auf einen Zentimeter, was und
What they talk about? Everything under the sun.
da der Leit's nicht.
Also ich bin begeistert vom Hans, wie die Sache angeht, wenn man mit ihm reden kann.
Being with Hans fills me with enthusiasm, just the way he goes about things and the way you can discuss it with him. It's just really good to sit down with him. It makes you feel good, it calms you. What he has to say all makes such good sense.
Glaube zu Gott.
And his belief in God means a lot to me too. You don't forget it.
Das soll man auch nicht vergessen.
The former skiing star is not the only athlete to use Grander technology. Current athletes like the world champions in trick cycling, Michael and Heiko Rauch, as well as their therapist Bernd Laudenbach, do too.
Mostly the people who come here are competitive sportsmen who want to return to training for competition as soon as possible after they've been injured. I use Grander technology to shorten recovery time. With the help of Grander technology, which is a very important part of my therapy, I can cut recovery time by at least half. For example, 2 weeks ago, my brother was having trouble with his back again, and Bernd treated Heiko with this device here. After the first treatment, the trouble was gone, and we could start training again immediately. I've purchased several types of therapy methods or equipment where, after you've used them for a short time, you more or less abandon them because you realize they don't work at all. But with Grander, and this is the honest truth, it's just the opposite. The entire product range he offers, well, it borders on the miraculous, especially in the field of physical therapy where I use it. But if you understand miracles, what a miracle really is, then you realize that it is simply nature in flow. In that sense, all Grander did was to copy nature and give it back to us.
Nature is the model, but it still hides a lot more secrets than it reveals. Grander's youngest son, Heribert, grew up in his father's workshop.
Ja, mit dem Magnet. Der Papa hat damals die Magnet.
There was a thing with the magnet. My father took a magnet and used it to pick up a stack of steel washers. He just kept adding one after another and picking up the stack. And we told our teacher at school about it, and he said, "But that's impossible, because magnets lose their power over time." And my father said, if you let the magnet do its work, it gets even stronger. The power of the magnet gets stronger. It only gets weaker if you keep it in a wooden box. I mean, I learned that from the time I was a child. And when they told us something else in school, I raised my hand, of course, and said, but that's not right. My father told me something different. And I really got into trouble, and the teacher gave me a bad grade.
Grander's director of engineering, Hannes Larch, came across a particularly puzzling physical phenomenon.
Das Interessante war, dass beide Kartuschen
The interesting thing was that both cartridges were built absolutely the same and as part of a series. And when you set them vibrating, every cartridge had exactly the same sound. And the phenomenal thing about the device is that because the cartridges were filled with different water, which had different information properties, the cartridges now sound different. We're going to demonstrate that now.
Das werden wir jetzt einmal in einem Beispiel ausprobieren. Also ich glaube, man hört ganz deutlich,
I think you can clearly hear that there is a difference in the vibration, a difference in the sound. Just how the tonal difference comes about remains a mystery to us. It's phenomenal.
Ja, da haben sie ja gesagt, das gibt's nicht.
Yes, you know, they all said, that can't be true because perpetual motion doesn't exist.
Das gibt's eh nicht.
Well, of course it doesn't exist, but that's not the thing. You have the magnets and their magnetic power, you know. In spring, for example, everything comes alive again. The grass starts to grow, the trees, the flowers, everything starts growing. everything turns green, and there's not a socket or a cable to be seen anywhere. Just think about it. Where does the power come from?
The question of where it comes from is not all that important to Alexander Moore, a gardener who works near Vienna. The important thing to him is the effect on his plants, as well as on his family, and no one can tell him it doesn't exist.
When it comes to growth, you normally figure the plants need a certain period from the time you set them out. But Grander has overturned all our previous calculations. All the young plants develop far more quickly and the plants are very healthy. They simply grow faster. The quality of the vegetables has clearly improved and they also keep longer. Plants are 90% water, and so with water that's more healthy and vital, the plants grow better. The vegetables become more tender. And that's not all. Our whole family has been using and drinking Grander water, and since then we've all become a lot healthier. And it's the same for us as for our plants. It makes us healthy and energetic.
Can water really take on qualities that make it better for people and plants than other water? Although science simply defines a water molecule with the formula H2O, this is a question that Grander pursued at an early stage.
And then the service station became available and there were 5 people interested, so we thought we might as well apply for it, we won't get it anyway. But then we got it.
Grander realized he had a special talent. He could fire people with enthusiasm. So without much more ado, he became a politician. In the 1970s, he headed the local Socialist Party. The group expanded from 20 members to more than 100, and even the local priest joined. That was an unbelievable event in Tyrol at the time. The unofficial party headquarters was Grander's service station. People wanted to work together to change the world and thought that politics was the way to do it. For the director of the Museum of Local History, Georg Jürschel, it was an unforgettable time.
The service station had a nickname. We called it the Politburo. Of course, it wasn't really an office. It was a service station with its oil cans and so on. But there were chairs and there was always beer and we talked politics all the time. That's just the way it was. There were always advocates and opponents and they all met there. And people used to say, they're meeting down at the Politburo again. And it was a great opportunity for him to recruit people for the party. Some of the ones he recruited left their party ideas in his drawer at the service station because they didn't have the nerve to take it home with them, because their wives would have been upset.
And everybody said that's a socialist service station. But the conservatives came to fill up their cars too. Sometimes they included the higher-ups.
One time it was the Austrian Chancellor, another time the Finance Minister. And of course the highlight was when the Austrian President Franz Jonas came to Jochberg. Interior Minister Otto Rösch was there and Hans Grander told him, you know, our policemen are driving around in a little Puch 500 and it uses more oil than it does fuel. Can you do something about it?
You know, I said to Otto, our police car, that Puch 500, it's a disgrace. It loses more oil than it burns fuel. Yes, said Otto, that's the kind of stuff I hear everywhere.
And one day there was a new VW Beetle parked in front of the Jochberg police station, and the police in Innsbruck just about dropped dead with surprise because nobody in Innsbruck knew anything about it, that Jochberg was getting a brand new police car.
And they delivered the new car, a new VW, direct from Vienna to Jochberg. And the people in Innsbruck couldn't understand it. They said, nobody told us anything. All we heard is that the Interior Minister talked to Grander.
After 9 years, Grande was tired of the service station and politics. He knew that neither one of them held any future for him, but it was a period in which he matured and created the basis for another life.
The 9 years at the station was an apprenticeship. For Johann Grande, all of life is an apprenticeship.
Grande recognized that he still had a lot to learn in life.
And then they introduced the value-added tax, and I'd had enough. I gave it up because you're nothing but a slave to the international oil companies. That's all you are when you lease a service station. And that's when it all started, after the service station.
And suddenly I stopped seeing Hans, didn't hear anything from him. I thought maybe they'd locked him up or something. There was no way of knowing. The pressure came from people saying, "He's not doing anything. What's he doing?" People simply said, "He's gone off the deep end." We always said as long as we don't have to go begging, we'll be all right. Because people had no idea what water was capable of.
Today, people believe him. In the year 2000, the Russian Academy of Natural Sciences awarded him its silver medal, the highest award ever made to a foreigner. The representatives of the Academy came to Jochberg in Tyrol because Grande has refused for some time now to travel far away from home. For many years, they've been experimenting with Grande's water in Moscow, and they expect dramatic results. A year later, the Republic of Austria awarded Grande the Cross of Honor for Science and Art.
Wissen Sie, wie viel Stück edler Hölzer es gibt?
Do you know how much fine wood there is that you could use to make a violin? But there was only one person who could make a Stradivarius, and that was Stradivarius himself. And that's why I think that only Hans Grande can make water be what it is.
Grande's water revitalization has become known primarily by word of mouth. Now more and more swimming pools in Germany, Austria and Switzerland are equipping their pools with Grande technology. They have all had the same experience. They use less chlorine, have better water quality and fewer skin problems.
Before we really had a problem with algae on the edge of the pool and in the pool itself. And we also had a heavy buildup of calcium deposits on our glass measuring equipment, but that's no longer the case. The pool more or less cleans itself. We have to do a lot less work to clean it, and we also use a lot less chlorine. We use about half as much chlorine as before. And the measuring glasses too. They don't get nearly as dirty or as calcified as before. We have a much higher water quality today, and we get very positive comments from the swimmers. The water is much more pleasant, and the people no longer get skin rashes, no itching. Our experience so far has only been positive.
Nature itself is full of mysteries.
It's the same with the birds. I noticed it a long time ago. Look, the swallows all fly away on the same day, and they fly far away, and yet they always come back to their nest. They don't have a map, a compass, or a travel agent, nothing, and yet they always come back.
If it's good for people, it should be good for animals too. But what about the placebo argument? It shouldn't apply here, should it?
My oldest mare, who is now 24 years old, had always had circulatory problems in the summer when the temperature climbed. I mean, her hind legs would always become swollen. She suffered from edema, and it seemed to get worse and worse until her legs got really thick. But now that I've had Granda water for about 3 months, the problem has completely disappeared. Her legs are like those of a 3-year-old. She no longer has circulatory problems and no longer retains fluid. Somehow, if someone had told me this would happen, I wouldn't have believed it. But a horse can't fool itself into thinking it works or into thinking it's doing better. Every day when I stop by the stable, I can't believe that she's doing so well.
It took Granda many years of experimentation, and even his wife was never completely sure whether the sacrifices they made would turn out one day to have been worthwhile.
Hat einen Motor angefangen zu bauen und das, ja, eins nach dem anderen. Und das
Later he started building engines, one after the other.
haben wir zuerst nicht viel.
At first we didn't believe that anything would come of it and that we could make money with it. But as it turned out, it was all worthwhile.
Und ja, wie es halt so ist, nicht? Es hat sich doch gelohnt.
I remember that my mother worked as a waitress at the Waldwirt Inn so that we could make it financially. Inge and Hani worked at the hospital and provided us with money to do the shopping. There were times when I realized that we really didn't have much money. When I was attending tourism school, for example, I couldn't afford to go on the excursion.